My name is Anthony, and this is the story of how I became both the savior and the scapegoat of my family. Growing up, we weren't rich, but we were happy, or at least that's what I told myself back then. My father worked in construction, his hands calloused from years of hard labor under the scorching sun. He came home every evening with dirt-streaked boots and a tired smile, proud to provide for us. My mother juggled part-time bookkeeping jobs, meticulously balancing spreadsheets while still managing to keep our modest home warm and welcoming. We weren't swimming in wealth, but we had enough food on the table, enough laughter during dinner, and enough love to make me believe everything would always be okay. But life has a cruel way of shattering illusions. A few years ago, my father injured his back at work, a devastating blow that left him unable to lift even the smallest tools, let alone carry the weight of our household. Disability payments were promised but never arrived, like rain clouds that teased relief yet never delivered. My mother took on extra shifts, her eyes growing weary as she buried herself in numbers late into the night. Still, it wasn't enough. The bills piled up faster than we could pay them, and the cracks in our once sturdy foundation began to show. That's when I stepped in, or rather when I was pulled in. At 18, fresh out of high school and eager to prove myself, I started contributing here and there. First, it was small things, covering the grocery bill one week, paying the electricity the next. But soon, "Can you help with this?" turned into, "You need to handle that," until I found myself shouldering the entire financial burden of our household. Rent, utilities, groceries, even my younger sister Ashley's school expenses, it all fell on me. And the worst part? They acted like it was completely normal. Like breathing air or drinking water, they assumed my sacrifices were just expected. No one ever said thank you, not my father, who sat glued to the TV with a beer in hand, not my mother, who treated my contributions as if they were simply my duty, and certainly not my older brother Liam, who at 28 still lived rent-free in the same house, mocking me for being so responsible. His words stung, sharp and dismissive, but nothing hurt more than the silence. The absence of gratitude, of acknowledgement, of anything resembling appreciation. It gnawed at me, this feeling of being invisible, of being taken for granted. Yet, I kept telling myself it was temporary. Once Dad got his disability check or Mom landed a better-paying job, things would go back to normal. Or so I thought. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was. I gave up opportunities, scholarships I could have pursued, friendships I might have nurtured, relationships I let slip through my fingers, all because I believed I was doing the right thing. Every paycheck went toward keeping the roof over our heads, ensuring there was food on the table, and giving Ashley a chance at a future brighter than mine. Meanwhile, my own dreams faded into the background, overshadowed by the relentless demands of responsibility. Then came Christmas night, the moment everything changed. We were gathered around the dining table, the usual holiday spread laid out before us: roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole. Despite our struggles, my mother always insisted on maintaining traditions, as though preserving the appearance of normalcy could somehow mask the chaos beneath. For the first half of the meal, everything seemed routine. My father drank steadily, my brother scrolled aimlessly on his phone, tossing out sarcastic remarks whenever Mom tried to spark conversation. Ashley barely looked up from her phone, lost in social media. Just another typical holiday in our dysfunctional little world. But somewhere between passing the stuffing and my father pouring himself another glass of whiskey, the conversation took an unexpected turn. "You know," my dad began, leaning back in his chair with an air of authority, "Anthony's been staying here rent-free for years now." I froze mid-bite, my fork hovering in the air. What was he getting at? Before I could respond, my mom chimed in, nodding as though this had been rehearsed. "We've been discussing it, sweetheart. You're 25 now. It's time for you to move out and start your own life." I stared at them stunned. "You're joking, right?" I managed to say, my voice trembling with disbelief. My brother scoffed, chiming in with his usual condescending tone. "Dude, you're way too old to still be living with your parents." I set my fork down deliberately, my hands clenched tightly around the utensil. "I pay to live here," I shot back, my voice rising. My father waved his hand dismissively. "That's not the point. A man your age shouldn't still be living at home." The room spun as their words sank in. After everything I'd done for them, for years, I had sacrificed my own happiness, my own future. They saw me as nothing more than a burden. In that moment, something inside me broke. The family I had fought so hard to protect no longer wanted me. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and suffocating. My father's declaration, "A man your age shouldn't still be living at home," wasn't just an observation, it was a dismissal. A cold, calculated shove out the door they had once begged me to keep open. I stared at them, my chest tightening as the full weight of their betrayal sank in. How could they sit there, feasting on turkey and cranberry sauce, while casually dismantling everything I had sacrificed for? "I cover the rent," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "The electricity, the internet, the groceries. Half of Ashley's school costs. And now you're calling me a mooch?" My mother exhaled deeply, shaking her head as though I were overreacting. No one's denying that you help Anthony, she said, her tone placating but laced with condescension. But it's time for you to be independent. Your father and I believe this is the best decision. The best for who? I snapped, my voice rising. For you? Because it sure doesn't feel like you've thought about what this means for me, or for any of us. She didn't respond, and that silence spoke volumes. They hadn't considered it. Not really. To them, I wasn't a person with dreams, aspirations, or limits. I was a paycheck, a safety net they had grown far too comfortable relying on. And now, with a few careless words, they were cutting me loose, blind to the chaos they were unleashing upon themselves. For years, I had convinced myself that my sacrifices were temporary, that my family would eventually regain their footing and I could reclaim my life. But sitting there, watching my father recline in his chair as if he were granting me some great favor, I realized how naive I had been. This wasn't about independence or growth, it was about convenience. They wanted me gone because it was easier than acknowledging the debt they owed me. I clenched my fists under the table, fighting back the urge to scream. Instead, I forced myself to stay calm. Fine, I said, my voice low but firm. If that's what you want. My mother's face softened, mistaking my compliance for acceptance. I understand it's intimidating, sweetheart, but this will benefit you. We can even assist you in searching for a place. I almost laughed but held it back. Instead, I simply nodded. I'll start packing tomorrow. The next morning, I woke before dawn, not because I intended to, but because sleep had eluded me entirely. The conversation from the night before replayed in my mind like a broken record. The way my father had leaned back in his chair, the way my mother had spoken to me as if I were a child incapable of understanding, the way my brother had smirked as though the entire situation were entertainment. This wasn't some joke. They wanted me gone. Fine. I was leaving. I pulled 2 duffel bags from my closet and began packing. Clothes first, the basics, then work essentials. My laptop, important documents, anything of value I refused to leave behind. I didn't own much in terms of furniture. Most of it belonged to them anyway. 4 years, I had delayed getting my own apartment, assuming they depended on me. Turns out, it wasn't me they depended on, it was my money. By midday I was nearly finished. I was stuffing the last few items into a bag when a knock echoed from my door. It was Ashley. She lingered in the doorway, arms folded, shifting uneasily from one foot to the other. You're seriously leaving? She asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. I zipped my bag shut. That's what they wanted. She bit her lip, looking uneasy. Mom thought you'd calm down. I let out a short, bitter laugh. She actually believes I'm just being dramatic. Ashley remained silent, simply standing there, seemingly unsure of what to say. And for the briefest moment, guilt pricked at me. She was the only person I regretted leaving behind. Still young, still trapped in this household. Listen, I said, my tone softening. I'm not upset with you, okay? But I can't stay where I'm not welcome. She nodded slightly but quickly averted her gaze, as if she didn't want me to see whatever emotion was written on her face. Then, without another word, she turned around and walked away. I let out a deep sigh and grabbed my bags. It was time to go. When I descended the stairs, the living room was vacant. For a brief second, I thought I might slip out unnoticed. But just as I reached the front door, my mother stepped in from the kitchen. Her eyes flickered toward my bags and she hesitated. You're really leaving now? I stared at her. You told me to. She frowned, as if hearing it phrased that way made her uncomfortable. Well, I assumed you'd take a little longer to figure things out. No need, I replied. I already have somewhere to stay. That wasn't entirely accurate. I had a handful of possibilities. Crash at a friend's place, rent something short-term. I'd work it out. What I wouldn't do was stand here and let her manipulate me into delaying my departure. Then my father entered the room, scratching his stomach lazily, as if this were just another ordinary afternoon. So you're really doing this? I didn't respond. I simply reached for the doorknob. That's when my mother spoke again. Anthony, before you leave, we need to discuss the bills. I stopped, then slowly turned back toward her. What? She spoke as if what she was saying was entirely reasonable. I understand that you're moving out, but we still require assistance with rent and utilities. We were thinking you could continue sending some money, at least temporarily. I stared at her, convinced I must have misheard. You must be joking. She shook her head. I'm not. We can't afford everything by ourselves right now, and you've been contributing for such a long time. This wouldn't be much different. I interrupted her. You forced me out. You told me to leave. She corrected herself as if that somehow changed the meaning. We asked you to leave. My father let out an irritated sigh as though I were the unreasonable one. Come on, kid. Don't be selfish. We raised you all these years. It's only fair that you help us out now. I felt my hands clench into fists. I couldn't wrap my head around what I was hearing. They had absolutely no issue telling me to leave, no hesitation in making me feel like an unwanted burden. But now that they realized kicking me out also meant losing my financial support, suddenly they wanted me to stick around, just enough to keep the money flowing in. Unbelievable. I inhaled deeply, forcing myself to stay composed. No, my mother blinked. No. I repeated, my voice firm. No. I'm not sending you another dime. You made it very clear that I'm no longer part of this household. So I'm done. A heavy silence followed. Then my father scoffed. So this is how you repay us? My mother looked genuinely insulted. We're your family, Anthony. I let out a laugh I couldn't suppress. That's funny, I said. You didn't seem to care about that yesterday. And with that, I turned toward the door, pulled it open, and stepped outside. Behind me, my mother started shouting my name. My father muttered something under his breath. My brother, who had been in the kitchen the entire time, grumbled, "Guess he's actually doing it." But I didn't stop. I didn't even glance back. I stepped outside, descended the porch steps, and strode toward my car, clutching my bags a little tighter. I had no idea what lay ahead, but for the first time in years, one thing was certain. I was finally free. Without glancing back, I drove away. The first night in my new apartment wasn't glamorous. It was just me, a borrowed blanket from Terry's closet, and the quiet hum of an unfamiliar space. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about someone barging into my room uninvited or hearing my father complain about how useless I was while still expecting me to foot the bills. The silence felt foreign but liberating. As I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, I realized something profound. I had finally stepped out from under their shadow. By the end of the week, I had signed a lease for a small one-bedroom apartment. It wasn't much, cracked tiles in the kitchen, creaky floorboards that groaned with every step, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture I brought in, every light bulb I screwed into the fixtures, every meal I cooked in the tiny kitchen felt like a declaration of independence. No more passive-aggressive remarks about how I managed their money. No more guilt trips over missed family dinners. Just me living life on my own terms. For the first time I could breathe. My stress levels plummeted almost immediately. I hadn't even realized how suffocating it had been to live under their roof until I no longer had to. There were no unexpected intrusions, no financial demands draining my paycheck before I even cashed it. I decorated the place bit by bit, choosing pieces that reflected who I wanted to be, not what they expected me to provide. Meanwhile, back at my old home, chaos was brewing. Though I never reached out, news found its way to me through Terry's mom, who still kept in touch with mine. At first, it was subtle updates. My mother picking up extra shifts, my father selling off old tools and furniture he hadn't used in years. But as weeks turned into months, the cracks began to show. The rent skyrocketed without my contributions. Utility bills piled up faster than they could pay them. Even Liam, my perpetually entitled older brother, had to start covering his own gas expenses, a concept so alien to him that he complained incessantly. They were struggling and they knew it. And yet, instead of owning up to the consequences of their actions, they clung to the illusion that I would eventually cave. After all, hadn't I always bailed them out before? Then came the phone call. It was late afternoon and I had just returned home from work. I flopped onto the couch, flipping through channels aimlessly when my phone buzzed. An unrecognized number flashed across the screen. Part of me wanted to ignore it. I had trained myself not to pick up calls unless absolutely necessary, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello. A brief pause followed before her voice filled the line, strained and hesitant. Anthony, it's Mom. I sighed deeply, already bracing myself. What do you need, Mom? She launched into her usual worried mother routine, though this time, there was a noticeable edge to her tone. I just wanted to check in on you, she said. It's been a few weeks and I know you're doing okay, but, well, we've been having some financial difficulties. My stomach tightened. Here we go again. We've been struggling a bit with the bills, she continued. You know how much your father brings in and I've taken on more shifts, but it's still not enough. And, well, we thought maybe you could help out a little. It wouldn't have to be much. I leaned back into the couch, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. I already told you, Mom, I'm done paying your bills. You were the ones who told me to leave, remember? You said I wasn't welcome anymore. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I recognized the tactic immediately, waiting for guilt to consume me, for me to question my decision, for me to crumble under the weight of obligation. But I didn't budge. I get it, Anthony, she finally said, her voice softening. We didn't mean what we said. We were angry. You were angry. But now everything is falling apart, and you're the only one who can pull us out of this. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me. I'm not rescuing you. You made it crystal clear that I wasn't wanted, that I was nothing but an inconvenience. You had no issue letting me pay for everything while I lived there, but now that I'm gone, you think I should still be supporting you? Absolutely not. She let out a frustrated breath. You're missing the point, Anthony. This isn't about money, it's about family. No matter what, you're still our son. And in a family we support each other when things get rough. I sat up straighter, my jaw tightening. Oh, family is an interesting choice of words. Strange how that only seems to matter when you need something from me. But when I needed anything, I was completely ignored. Don't pull that card now, Anthony, she pleaded, her voice softening further, almost desperate. We've tried everything. Without your financial help, we're going to lose the house. You can't expect us to just handle this alone. This is your responsibility too. You need to do something. My pulse quickened, anger rising in my chest. My responsibility? Are you kidding me? I am not accountable for the reckless choices you made. I am not obligated to fix your financial mistakes. You and Dad made your own decisions and now you have to face the outcome. I'm begging you, she whispered, her voice trembling. Please, you can't just abandon us like this. We need you. That word, need, hit me hard, not because it made me feel remorseful but because it revealed just how manipulative this entire conversation was. I could hear the desperation in her voice, the way she was trying to reel me back into their orbit. But I had drawn my boundaries and they had crossed them. There was no undoing that. For a few seconds I sat in silence before responding, my voice firm and measured. I can't help you. I won't. You told me to leave and now I'm gone. I feel bad that you're struggling, but that's not my responsibility. Another long silence stretched between us. I could hear her shallow breathing through the receiver, and then without another word she ended the call. I sat there for a while, feeling both relief and a faint trace of guilt. I didn't want to feel guilty. They had pushed me away, betrayed me, but watching them struggle was difficult. Still, I refused to let them drag me back into their mess. Days later, my father sent a text. Come home, Anthony. We need to talk. I ignored it. And that's when they started showing up. It had been a month since I last heard from them. A full month of silence after my mother's desperate phone call, where she tried, and failed, to guilt me into bailing them out. I thought that was the end of it. For once, they seemed to understand the line I had drawn, that their betrayal came with consequences. But I underestimated just how far they were willing to go to manipulate me back into submission. On a Saturday afternoon, as I was preparing lunch in my tiny kitchen, the sharp knock on my door startled me. It wasn't loud, but it carried an urgency that made my stomach tighten. I opened the peephole cautiously, expecting another delivery or maybe Terry stopping by unannounced. Instead, I froze. Standing outside were my parents, both of them. My father looked irritated, arms crossed like he owned the place, while my mother stood slightly behind him, wringing her hands nervously. They hadn't called ahead, hadn't sent a text, hadn't asked if I was even available. They simply showed up, assuming they still held some authority over me. I hesitated for a moment, gripping the doorknob tightly. Part of me wanted to pretend I wasn't home, to let them knock until frustration forced them to leave. But I knew that wouldn't solve anything. Taking a deep breath, I pulled the door open slowly, keeping my expression neutral despite the storm brewing inside me. What are you doing here? I asked, my voice deliberately calm, almost cold. We need to talk, my father said immediately, his tone low and commanding, as though this was some kind of formal negotiation rather than an intrusion into my life. He had always been stubborn, refusing to accept when things didn't go his way. I already told you, I don't want to talk. I stood firm, blocking the entrance with my body. You made it very clear where I stand in this family. I'm not going to keep bailing you out just because you failed to prepare for the consequences of your actions. My mother finally spoke up, her voice trembling but laced with desperation. Anthony, this is ridiculous. We're family. You can't just abandon us to figure this out on our own. Why shouldn't I? I shot back, anger rising in my chest. You didn't care about me when I was the one paying for everything. So why should I care about you now? Because you owe us, my father snapped, his voice rising sharply, almost frantic now. We gave you everything, you never had to worry about bills. We let you stay under our roof for years and now you're just going to walk away? You can't do that. You have to help us. I met his stare, my expression cold and unwavering. I don't owe you anything. Not anymore. For a moment, they both stared at me, shock and disbelief written across their faces. Then, without warning, my father stepped forward, shoving past me as though he still believed he had the right to march into my apartment. Move aside, Anthony, he ordered gruffly, brushing against me roughly. I didn't try to stop him physically. He was bigger, stronger, and angrier than I cared to engage with, but as soon as he crossed the threshold, I realized just how much he still saw himself as the ruler of my life. He strode through my space like it belonged to him, eyeing everything with a critical glare. This place is a mess, he muttered under his breath, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. Leave my apartment, I demanded, gritting my teeth so hard I could feel my jaw ache. Instead of leaving, he turned around, arms crossed defiantly. You need to start acting like an adult, Anthony. You need to help us. You owe us. My anger bubbled dangerously close to the surface. I don't owe you anything, I repeated, my voice louder now, sharper. I've paid my dues. Every single bill, every single expense, it all came out of my pocket. If anything, you owe me. My mother stepped forward then, her hands fluttering nervously as she tried to mediate. Please, Anthony. We're not asking for much. Just a little help with the bills and everything will be okay. I shook my head, incredulous. You don't get it, do you? I'm not your safety net anymore. I'm not here to fix everything for you. I'm done. They stood there, silent and stunned, as though they couldn't comprehend the possibility that I might actually stand my ground. The tension in the room grew unbearable, suffocating. Finally, I broke the silence with words that sealed the deal. "I don't want to see you again." With that, I slammed the door in their faces. Through the peephole, I watched them linger for a moment, exchanging glances filled with anger and disbelief. Then, reluctantly, they turned and walked away. As I leaned against the closed door, letting out a shaky breath, I felt conflicted. Relieved, yes, but also burdened by a faint trace of guilt. Watching them struggle wasn't easy, no matter how justified I felt in cutting them off. Still, I reminded myself of the truth: they had pushed me away first. They had treated me like nothing more than a source of income, and now they were reaping what they had sown. For the first time in years, I truly felt free. And yet, part of me wondered if freedom would ever come without a price. Months have passed since the confrontation at my apartment. Life has settled into a rhythm I never thought possible. A quiet, steady hum of independence that feels like breathing fresh air after years of suffocation. My days are no longer dictated by their demands or punctuated by their passive-aggressive remarks. I wake up when I want, cook meals for myself without worrying about feeding an entire household, and spend my evenings in peace, free from the constant undercurrent of guilt and obligation. For the first time in years, I feel truly alive. The small apartment I moved into has become more than just a place to live. It's a sanctuary. Every corner reflects who I am now, not who they expected me to be. The furniture is modest but chosen with care, the walls adorned with simple decorations that remind me of the life I'm building on my own terms. Even the creaky floorboards seem less annoying these days. They've grown familiar, almost comforting. This space isn't luxurious, but it's mine, earned through years of sacrifice and finally claimed as my own. Meanwhile, back at my old home, things aren't going well. Through Terry's mom, snippets of news trickle down to me, though I haven't asked for them. My father has been trying to find a second job, but his age and bad back make it difficult. My mother works double shifts, her health visibly deteriorating under the strain. Liam, once so quick to ridicule me, has started borrowing money from friends and relatives, though no one seems eager to lend him much. Ashley texts me occasionally, her messages brief and hesitant. She tells me she misses me, that things aren't the same without me there. But she never asks for anything, not outright, and I suspect she understands why I left better than anyone else. Despite their struggles, I haven't wavered. Not once. Part of me feels guilty watching them endure the consequences of their choices, but another part knows this was inevitable. They pushed me away, treated me like nothing more than a paycheck, and now they're facing the fallout. It's hard to pity them when I remember how easily they discarded me. Still, I can't help but wonder if I could have done something differently. Late one night, as I sit alone in my apartment, I find myself reflecting on everything that's happened. The memories flood back. The endless sacrifices, the sleepless nights worrying about bills, the crushing weight of being taken for granted. And then there's the anger, still simmering beneath the surface, every time I think about how they dismissed me so casually. Did I make the right decision? Was cutting ties completely the only way to reclaim my freedom? Or should I have offered them some kind of support, however minimal, despite everything they put me through? I sit there for a long time, staring out the window at the city lights below. The question lingers in my mind, heavy and unresolved. Did I do the right thing? On one hand, I know I deserve this life, this freedom, this peace. I earned it, not just financially but emotionally. I gave them years of my life, poured every ounce of energy into keeping their world intact, and what did I get in return? Betrayal. Dismissal. A sense of entitlement so ingrained they couldn't even imagine life without me footing the bills. But on the other hand, they're still my family. Blood ties run deep, no matter how strained or broken they may be. Isn't there a part of me that owes them something, even if it's just a fraction of what I gave before? Or is holding on to those obligations exactly what kept me trapped for so long? I don't have answers. Maybe I never will. What I do know is this: I'm happier now than I've been in years. I've built a life where I'm not constantly walking on eggshells, waiting for the next crisis to fall on my shoulders. I've learned to prioritize myself, to set boundaries, to say no without feeling guilty. And yet, I can't shake the nagging doubt that maybe I could have found a middle ground, a way to help them without losing myself again. As dawn breaks, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I close my eyes and let the silence envelop me. The questions remain unanswered, the wounds unhealed. But perhaps that's okay. Maybe the point isn't finding closure, it's learning to live with the complexity of it all. Because in the end, this story isn't just about me or them. It's about the fragile line between duty and dignity, between love and exploitation. It's about asking ourselves how far we're willing to go for the people we care about, and when it's time to stop. And so, I leave you with this: was I wrong to cut them off entirely? Or was it the only way to save myself?